Hello. How are we?
Amazing.
Good.
Amazing. Okay, welcome back to another TBW podcast, which we haven't done in many, many months.
Yeah.
Yes.
To begin with, it is Brain Awareness Week.
Yes, it is.
It's true. And so Himangi said she will very kindly introduce us to the week. So what is Brain Awareness Week?
Take it away.
Yes. Brain Awareness Week is where we talk about, we educate other people about the brain and how, for example, stress can affect the brain or trauma can affect the brain.
Stress and trauma can
So
affect the brain.
we do, this is more for awareness of for other people to know how other things or how outside things can
impact your brain, or just how the brain functions and
Yes, the
everything. So
brain
it's an overall
functions.
awareness campaign, a global awareness
Yes.
campaign
Yes.
that is run to increase awareness about the brain,
Yes.
which is fantastic. Okay, so what are we trying to spread awareness about today? And I know you want to share, Zoha, something about doom scrolling and
Yes.
your experience with trying to explain what that is, what
Yeah,
you learned
yeah.
about it and everything.
And how it links with ADHD as well.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so, and there's some myths somewhere.
Most probably, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
it'll come. It'll happen.
It'll happen.
Okay. So to begin with, let's talk about the doom scrolling thing, which I think is very crucial.
Yes.
You said there was a misunderstanding around the world, or at least people you talk to, about the meaning of doom scrolling.
Yes. So I think a lot of people think doom scrolling is where we just sit hours on our phone just scrolling through content. But doom scrolling is actually taking in the negative news that we find online.
Is it specific to negative
Yes,
news?
it's specific to just negative things that we might come into, and I feel like some people that once they start, they can't tear themselves away from it, so they kind of go down this rabbit hole of just consuming negative information over negative information, and it's just like a snowball effect.
Yeah, and they use it interchangeably to just spending time on your phone when
Yes.
it isn't.
Yes.
So is there something like, if you spend too much time on your phone, say watching positive stuff, that's fine.
Yeah.
But the same amount of time if you dedicate to like negative news and how the world is
That
really
is
bad,
doom scrolling. Yes.
that is doom
Yeah.
scrolling. So I think if you doom scroll a lot, say for someone who has some level of neurodivergence, they're already struggling with a lot of general processing. They also process things
Yes.
at a different rate. They're probably faster in processing, but they slow down because the consumption can lead to overwhelming feelings. So it can impact people who have like ADHD and stuff.
Yes, especially if they're very impulsive or they become hyperfixed. So once
Hyperfixation happens.
Hyperfixation, yeah. So then once they start, they can't really stop themselves, and they just keep going. And before they know it, it's been hours, and they've just been consuming a lot. And of course, there's impacts, on the brain or on our overall mental health, in the sense that we're taking on all this negativity and then going about our day, and that can really affect us.
Yeah, emotionally as well, right?
Yes.
So there's a direct, even though we spend a lot of time on our phones anyway,
Yeah.
spending time on our phones, because just the way the world is right now, things are quite bad online, just the way everything is. And I think
Yeah.
consuming that at a level where we are unable to process everything emotionally is quite harmful, in the sense that you can get overwhelmed, you can get stressed too fast.
Yes.
You might even get secondhand trauma.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, for sure.
Which, yes, trauma, yes.
Trauma advocate here.
Secondhand trauma can
That's
happen,
true.
which is very true, right? And you're very focused on the trauma area. You have anything to contribute about the doom scrolling factor?
Yes, because when she talked about doom scrolling, she also said that negative content.
Yes.
But what happens is people will ask that we scroll, we look for good content, but then you inevitably see a negative content.
Correct,
Right?
yeah.
So we cannot run away from it. And also
It's sprinkled in there. It's not like you have control
Yeah.
over it at all
Exactly.
times.
There is algorithm, but still it doesn't work that well. So when we doom scroll, we think that we're doing it to relieve stress. That is why we doom scroll, but it actually gives us more stress when we consume a lot of negative content which is online. Now, when we talk about stress and trauma, it also affects the amygdala that we know.
So amygdala is the fear center of the brain.
Center,
Yeah.
yes, fear center. Fight or flight response. We usually freeze when we doom scroll. We freeze. We have that normal reaction of not knowing what to do. How do we help? We can't do anything. So all of that creates a lot of stress, secondhand stress, because we see people suffering online, but we don't know what to do. So
Helplessness.
Helplessness,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
So
That's
that is
huge.
your second-hand trauma. And when I will talk about stress and trauma and how it can affect the brain, it can actually change the neuropathways of your brain. So it is not just you trying to you will find ways to cope with it, but you will also see that your brain waves are changing. And because of that, we need to really work on how we can help ourselves, ground ourselves,
Yes.
find ways where we can help other people, or find ways how we don't take too much stress on ourselves, and not doom scroll basically.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that you said was very interesting was even though you try to
Yes.
navigate it,
Yes.
you will create coping strategies.
Yes.
But why should we come to a position where we have to create
Exactly.
those coping strategies?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
but then you can't avoid doom scrolling.
No, you
No.
can't.
I mean, we had a student, I think, recently that spoke to
Yes.
you about doom scrolling.
Yes.
How was that?
So yeah, basically I had to distinguish the difference because this student has ADHD and they're very aware of it. They're aware of their symptoms. They know how to manage it in a way. And he knew the term doom scrolling, but I had to just redefine it for him in the sense that he's like, oh, I spend loads of time on TikTok and I'm doom scrolling.
It's that.
But not everything on TikTok is negative. So that's not technically doom scrolling. It's more like the negative news or, those heavy videos where you have that feeling of helplessness, etc. So that is the difference. And just being aware of that and understanding how we can maybe find tips around it. Of course, it's not avoidable, but just finding what we can do to maybe reduce that or become aware of where these sources of information are coming from. Maybe pick one channel or one place they're like, okay, this is more
Credible.
credible and
Not only is it more credible, that the information you're getting doesn't contribute to most doom scrolling.
yes,
Right?
exactly.
That's the kind of channel you want to look for, which is interesting because he's probably listening to videos that talk about doom scrolling on TikTok.
Yeah.
So there might be also spreading misinformation by using buzzwords.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really help.
There's
'Cause-
another term like bed rotting or brain rotting, like all of
Yeah,
these
yeah,
terms
yeah, yeah.
that you've probably seen on TikTok
Yeah.
as well. So
And brain rotting probably, we have it in a very scientific format also.
Yes.
But in the TikTok format,
yeah.
probably the way they speak about it is incorrect.
yeah, it's more like procrastination, but that's not technically brain rotting. So yeah, it's just a lot of misinformation going around and people not really understanding what it is that they're doing. So it's a good space here to just define exactly what those terms are and call out that misinformation.
Yeah, truly. And you said something interesting about the neural pathways of it.
Yes.
So they get created even while we doom scroll?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yeah, they do.
Why are you looking at me with Why are you looking at me with so much like I don't know. Maybe. I
You
think
are
so.
right.
I mean, it depends on the content that you're consuming. So if you consume like a lot of, I think one of the biggest things is that because you doom scroll, I think it's mostly inattention that you get from it, and how you cannot focus on other things. So this is a skill that we learn, a negative skill that we learn that translates to our other work that we do in our daily life. For example, if you're doom scrolling, we have, of course, inattentiveness, which means that in our task, or if you're working, or if you're doing something, over there also we will think of either doom scrolling or getting distracted by notifications or doing other things. So also I would like to add another thing where we talked about doom scrolling, and I think one of the biggest times that we do it is before we go to sleep. And it also affects our sleep. It also affects our mental health because we don't get enough sleep. It also affects the next day. We're sleepy. So it's a lot of.
I actually had an experience exactly like that. So when the wars started all over the world, I used to doomscroll. I consume a lot of content. It's one of my biggest things. I love information. So I was taking it in right before I went to bed. While sleeping, I had a burst of paranoia. And in my sleep, I could recognize it. But I can recognize it because I have the knowledge of it.
Yeah.
My breathing patterns changed. The way I woke up in the middle of the night changed. And the paranoia level increased. So then after that, I had to actively change what I watch. So I started watching podcasts about finances. Which is not any better, but it was better in the sense. It was better in the sense it wasn't activating those fear center areas or
Yes.
triggering any sort of
Cortisol
levels while I'm asleep,
Yeah.
because the sleep disturbances increased.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's actually a very interesting fact that you brought out, because that's true. That does happen, and even people who are very aware and who work in this field may not necessarily understand that that's what's happening.
But because we have the knowledge, because we are aware of it, it's a little bit easy for us to find coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
because we are aware of the coping
Yeah,
mechanisms.
that's
as
correct.
well.
Yeah.
And that is why the whole this week is important, is because we need to spread awareness of also to get to know about our brain, but also how we can cope with stress, cope with other things that may decline our brain
Yeah.
Functioning.
function.
Yeah, or
Just like
general-
now, just like
just
now.
right now, how you have to slow process
I know
that.
my coping strategies. I have Aditi over here. So,
Slow processing that
Yeah.
just happened because of that. Quickly, if you want to talk a little bit about stress and trauma as well, which we have been talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
but we spoke about it in the context of doom scrolling. What other context do you want to talk about stress and trauma?
So, like I mentioned, stress and trauma affects the brain, the cortisol levels, the adrenaline, all of that. And when we talk about that, that has a decline in our mental health. It has a decline in our sleep cycle. It affects our brain. And this I did not know until a couple of months ago, that like I mentioned, it actually changes the neural pathways of our brain. And for that, we know the term neuroplasticity that we
Yeah.
talked about, that
Yeah.
we use all the time, that we can train our brain to think in a certain way, or to develop the skills of critical thinking, or having focus or attention. So we need to be aware of what causes stress to our brain, how we can try and reduce that stress, and how we can make sure that we are in touch with our brain.
And what is a way you can do that with? Like, how do I recognize patterns?
I think it's know where you feel like. So we have physical symptoms as well, as we know. So make sure you know your physical symptoms. If you're, like you mentioned, your sleep cycle had changed, you were getting less sleep, you recognize that you were breathing a little heavily. So these things will always show. So this is what
Yeah.
you can do. Your first thing is your physical responses. Your mental health, is it declining? Are you having anxiety? Are you you have depression, or you have PTSD? Sometimes people have PTSD just because of secondhand trauma as well.
Yeah.
So are you going through PTSD? So what are the symptoms? And then you're aware of those things. And then we find strategies of how we can cope, in the sense that what can help us sleep better. For example, since we're talking about doom scrolling, we
Yeah.
know that we do it at night the most. So maybe reducing the time that we do
Yeah.
it.
Screen time reduction right before you sleep.
reduction,
Yeah.
exactly. So things that will work for you, because I know that I am an early sleeper, an early riser, so I know that I need to have that routine for myself. You, on the other hand, may be a late sleeper.
That's correct.
That's not a bad thing to
Yeah, I know.
have, but you should know how you can work according to your schedule.
Correct. So then
Yeah.
so recognition of your own patterns in terms of what works for you is what you're
Yes,
looking at.
exactly.
But you know how you used all these terminology like PTSD and depression and anxiety and stuff. Like when we go back to the doom scrolling aspect of it, a lot of that information is present very colloquially.
Yeah.
Like, doom scrolling is this is anxiety, this is depression,
Yeah.
right? How does one actively identify that this I am feeling anxious does not mean I have anxiety?
Yeah, that's so important.
How do you
Awareness.
So many
recognize
people do this.
Awareness, read up on it, do your research.
From the right places.
From the right
credibility.
places, credibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Ask psychologists, therapists, go to them, your doctors, GP. You
Yeah.
know, if it
So all the information you get from TikTok is not necessarily correct.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that's where doom scrolling comes in, right?
Exactly.
I think the other side of the doom scrolling factor, besides the stress and trauma and the misinformation, is the fact that everything is there all at once,
yes,
Yeah.
right? So even this information
Yes.
is going to be there on TikTok,
Yes, yes,
right? So
yes.
credibility searching research is hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people would argue that isn't it better that I consume a lot of different things and then decide for myself?
Well, yeah, but only if it's one topic. Like if you go on TikTok, I start from a horror story to someone feeding their dog to some
We sound nice.
war happening, some
That
war
doesn't sound nice.
happening,
That doesn't
exactly,
sound nice.
and then
Yeah.
some information
That's
about doom
basically
scrolling. So
everyone's
it's like
algorithm, yeah.
the information, the area of information. Like if it's one thing, then we can understand, we can see where the credibility lies, or we can try and do our research online. But when there's no sense to what,
How do you
will
train that to
next?
someone with ADHD, for example, right? You spoke about that. They love to jump.
They
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent people love to jump information and hyperfixate on the task they're doing.
Yeah.
So say the task they're doing is scrolling, but the information is excessive.
Yes, they really need to. Yeah, we need to find different techniques. I mean, I know the whole phone itself, there's a screen time, being aware of your screen time as well. So you need to have that in your mind, like, okay, I need to put away this much time. And I know you can come up with like time limits on the iPhone as well.
Sleep mode,
Yeah.
digital well-being,
So
all that.
it will
Focus.
just log off. So maybe you're scrolling and then all of a sudden the app will just stop and it'll just say your limit's up.
Yeah.
So you can set things like that, but you need to also take that step yourself and be aware.
Yeah, and follow through.
Yes, that's the difficult
And I
part.
think also changing from phone and hyperfixating on something else. That will
Yeah,
be more
replacement
productive.
strategies.
Replacement,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Replacing that, maybe maybe if you love art, I know people who love art, but they don't do it so often because they
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
get time.
Yeah.
It's
That's
because they're
true.
on their phone. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah,
not
there's
do
always
art?
time. They just need to make
Yes,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So replacement strategies are also one that you can do to get the same level of dopamine hit. What do we do for that?
Well,
Now that's the bigger
That's-
question,
yeah,
right?
that's
That is
the tricky
actually
one.
that's the tricky one.
That's why they're scrolling, because they're getting that dopamine hit.
So that's where we go back to the awareness part.
awareness.
We might not everyone has the answers to everything. We don't know what works for everyone. What works for me will definitely not
yeah,
work for
it's
Zoha.
very
Yes.
different.
And what works for us who sleep late at night will not work
Yeah.
for you who sleeps very early.
Yeah.
in
But I
night.
think also like basic things like having a healthy lifestyle, that doesn't mean sleeping late or sleeping early.
Yeah.
More,
There's
more
actually a
of
very
like-
good book about this.
Yeah.
It's called When by Daniel H. Pink.
I've heard.
It's
I've
a
been wanting
great
to read
book.
it. Yeah.
That describes how everyone has their own cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
timing cycle.
Exactly.
That's why schools don't work for everyone. Fun
Exactly.
fact.
Oh no.
That's kind of
So
controversial.
controversial.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
That could be a whole other podcast.
But yeah, there are basic things like eating healthy, having like a healthy lifestyle. That also, like, these are basic
And
things that
routine.
everyone can
Routine's
do.
so
having
important.
a routine and
Yeah.
other things. But yes, there are some things that are specific to us as well that we need to be more aware of our own selves and know about
Introspection. A lot of self awareness and introspection
Yes.
can lead us to those knowledge about our patterns. If you write things down, like there's this I don't know the name of the writer, but the book called The Artist's Way. It's a very good book that explains techniques you can do to tap into your creative side. So there's something called morning pages, which is an interesting.
I've heard,
You've heard, right?
yeah.
Morning
You told me
pages.
about this,
Yeah, morning
yeah.
pages is great. You just every morning you write 3 pages of everything that comes into your
Yeah,
brain,
yeah.
right? And then you reread it for yourself. And even in therapy, we can use it to just go like, oh wow, this is what is happening inside my brain,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be connected.
Yeah.
So those kind of activities or those kind of like journaling and meditation and all the anything that helps you pattern recognize your own thoughts
Yeah.
can really benefit in this process of identifying your stress and your trauma and identifying why and what you're doom scrolling through,
Yes.
Or boxing.
or boxing or
Yeah,
compartmentalizing.
physical aspect. Yeah.
Physical
yeah.
exercise.
Physical aspects.
Yeah.
To close this up, is there anything that you can offer me in terms of a myth? Fun friends.
Yes.
Okay, we just did this video.
Okay.
You should go check out our TikTok page. It
Nice
is
plug, I
about-
like it. I like it.
At the brain workshop, you mean?
The myth is that we don't, we only use 10% of our brain, which is not correct. We use all parts of our brain
At all times.
at all times.
It just depends
It
on
just
efficiency level.
differently, yes.
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 Yes, this is a good one. What about?
Also, people think that we're very good at multitasking, or our brain's good at multitasking, and we can get a lot of tasks done. That's also a myth. The brain is best when it can focus on one task at a time, or we like to call it divided attention.
Yeah, you can divide your attention, but don't
Between
multiply
two
it.
tasks,
Yes.
yes.
Or like how the Netflix producers hope for, they want us to have a 3-screen effect.
Yeah.
So you're putting the TV on, you're on your phone, and then you're on a laptop all at once.
Yeah.
That actually doesn't benefit you.
No.
Yes.
No matter how much the big people want us to do it,
Yes.
we should try and avoid it.
Yeah, you're not going to get far.
We can only, yeah, exactly. And lastly, just to wrap this up, it is Ramadan. So Ramadan Kareem to
Ramadan
those who
Kareem.
are practicing Ramadan. That's the way to call it, I would think.
Yeah.
Recently, we put out a blog about it as well. Newsletter went out describing some of the benefits that we have about fasting.
Yes.
Which I didn't know actually.
Yeah.
Because I know that a lot of neurodivergent people don't actually fast because it's not recommended. You have to follow some medication and all of that. But those who do, what can you inform them about the benefits?
So fasting has a lot of benefits. It's also, this month is a time for like cleansing. So specifically to do with the brain and the body, we're like cleansing ourselves from those toxins inside, and it can help reduce medical issues such as Alzheimer's and slow down that process in terms of other neurodegenerative diseases
Disorders,
or
yeah.
disorders, yes. And it can also reduce strokes, which is also a good benefit. And there's still ongoing science and experiments practice over it, but there are a lot of benefits in the medical
and I think the
side.
general benefit of it and the broader aspect of things besides the mental health aspect is also being able to sit with yourself for
Yes.
long periods of time.
Yes.
In just being able to understand that I don't need to serve to certain temptations, you don't need to be impulsive.
Yeah.
Those quiet moments
Controlling, yeah.
Yeah.
also benefit
Yeah,
your
it's
overall.
a very spiritual time, and basically stepping back and just taking it a bit more slow, and just being one with yourselves. And fasting can not just be food and water; it can be a lot of things. Maybe people reduce. I was telling Himangi, like, I'm reducing music because to me that is something I can try and hold back on, or watching TV shows. Maybe do something else that will help you spiritually, and try and reduce those things that normally would waste your time. So
Yeah, that's very nice.
So
very
that could
lovely.
help with doom scrolling.
Yeah,
Yeah, it could. This also ties in with intermittent fasting. So even people that aren't necessarily doing Ramadan or fasting day and night in that sense. No, they don't fast day and night.
No, they're not. They're fasting in the day, and then after many 15 to 16 hours,
fasting brain.
it's a fasting brain.
Yeah, but that also helps as well. I know Himangi was saying you're also trying intermittent fasting.
Intermittent, yes. Intermittent fasting.
It's okay, we understand.
I eat from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And
Okay.
I fast.
Rest of the time.
Yes, it was a bit challenging at the start, but now I think I'm getting used to it.
That's fantastic. I like that all of you have discipline. I have zero. It's lovely, amazing.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I
It's
will blame it on.
realization.
Let's blame it on something.
No.
In any case, it's thank you very much, ladies, for
Thank you.
sitting with me and describing how good you guys are with your brain and your mental health.
Thank you for sitting with us
Yeah,
and keeping
thank
you as an
you.
example. We can,
Thank you.
We got two sides of a coin.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And the next time we will try and talk a little bit more about the factor we picked up on earlier. What was that?
What is that?
Why schools may not be best
Oh,
or will not
yes.
work for everyone, and
Yes.
why some children might not be good at assessments.
I think that'd be very interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.